How many of you want to make an impact across the world? Raise your hand.
I choose not to be a victim.
Time is so precious.
I've always embraced my autism.
I can go on and live my life the way I want.
My life now is without
We are more
substance.
influential than we think we are.
Just before COVID, actually about 3 years ago, I did a speech on health and nutrition. I also have a certificate in health and nutrition. And I was giving a speech about how to have better eating habits, which is maybe not a good thing to talk about right after dinner. But I was moving and I was emotional and I was telling stories and people were looking at me, a lot like you are now. You're looking at me and going, and I'm thinking, I'm getting them. I'm reaching them. They're trying to make a decision about eating healthier. And afterwards, I was hearing comments from the crowd that was like, that was really good, except for I don't know what you were trying to do with your clothes. Or that was great, but were you gonna do something with your jacket? And I never once looked down until I had a mentor say, look down, and I went, and the entire speech, I had this buttoned like this for the entire time. And I realized that the inquisitive looks were not because I was cutting them to the soul of changing their lives. It was, should I say something about your misguided jacket or just stay quiet? I'm not really sure. But we kind of feel like that now, don't we, right now? Where we can connect, we're in this reality, we're connecting with each other, but there's something that's a little amiss. There's something that's different than what we've had even just a couple years ago. And we all know what those are. One of them is this. Whether you wear them now or not, we still have people wearing them. And what happens with this? It's pretty obvious. We cover the face. You know that emotion is read mostly through the face. You can see some of it through the eyes, but the eyes can be confusing. Seeing the whole face empowers us to be empathetic with one another. And so when we're not empathetic, or we don't feel empathy toward others because their face is covered, we start to become isolated and feel isolated. So we have this. We also have this, 2 meters away. Now, if I'm standing in line at the bank, or sometimes when you're just standing in line somewhere, you like to have people that are 2 meters away. But it does create a little bit of an isolation feeling. The other thing that happens, hi Zoom people, I'm gonna talk to you in just a minute. But the other thing that happens is that when somebody is really close, it used to be kind of annoying. You know, we all have this personal space that we're comfortable with, and sometimes people from other cultures or countries will get close to you and you kind of feel like you have to back off because we're Canadian and we have a lot of space around each other. But now instead of just thinking, oh my gosh, you're kind of invading my personal space, I'm starting to feel like, ooh, like I need to take a shower because I feel like, how dare you get so close to me in times like this? Are you sweating? Did you just cough? Why are you so close to me? And so again, it creates that anxious feeling that we have. And then lastly, as we were talking about it earlier, we have all of these Zoom meetings. And Zoom meetings can be amazing because you can be efficient. You can talk to people all over the world. You don't have to go there. But there is a disconnect with Zoom. One, you don't have eye contact. I can look right in this camera and it looks like I'm looking at every single one of you people on Zoom in the eye, and yet I have no idea what you look like or even if you're on screen because I have to look over here. But now they can't see me look them in the eye. So we have to play this little game of eye contact, not eye contact. The other thing that happens on Zoom is sometimes you just get the face. Have you been on Zoom and somebody's this close to the screen? If you're in real life and you're that close to somebody, you're either going to kiss them or punch them. And so our tendency when somebody gets that close is to back away. So there's a little bit of tension when somebody on the Zoom screen is that close. So I can't see you guys, but I trust now that all of you move back a little bit, because what happens if I gave my whole speech like this? And I was talking about effective communication, but I never showed you my hands. At first it might be okay. And then maybe there's a little bit of discomfort. You might not even know it. There's just kind of a disconnect. And then you might be thinking, what's that guy hiding? Why is his hands behind his back? I'm starting to feel a little uncomfortable. It's because our primitive brain, when we were seeking out other settlements or other tribes. What would we do when we'd meet a bunch of strangers? When we'd run across a tribe or a settlement and we're traversing the countryside to try and meet people to maybe trade with? I'm not a threat. I don't have any weapons. In fact, I trust that you will not stab me because I'm actually exposing my vital organs now as well. And so when we do this, it looks like maybe we're hiding something. And our lizard brain, that primitive brain of ours, starts to diminish in that trustworthiness. And so we have all of these things. We have this, we have this, we have this. And it creates a compound effect that creates a disconnect one from another. And we start to feel more isolated. And we have to try harder. It's going to take more energy to have to connect with one another. And so tonight, what we're going to do, it'll be a little interactive. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 3 things that we can do, easy things that all of us can do to improve our professional and personal lives in communication so that we can be better moving forward. Now, we don't know what it's going to look like 5 years from now, but we do know that it will be different. Some things are going back to the way they were. Other things will always be different. How long do we have to stay 2 meters apart? How long do we should or they recommend we wear masks, or that people just wear masks because they're safer? They feel safer. And so all of these little things we're going to have to navigate. And so the first word that we're going to work about, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use AWM to help you all remember it as an acronym for you guys to remember the 3 things that we're going to talk about tonight. So the first one, I almost used awkward, but I decided to use acknowledge. Acknowledge. So this was just 2 weeks ago. I was in a boardroom, and I just meet a couple organizers at an organization. And they brought me into the boardroom, the receptionist did, and I sat down and I'm looking out the window, and there's the window washer kind of scaling on a rope, washing the windows. I thought, that's a little bit like life. Sometimes we're just like hanging on for dear life trying to get the job done. But I waited about 5 minutes, and I had this. I was hanging on to it, and they walked in, and they all had masks on. And I said, hi, it's so nice to meet you. Do you want me to take this off? And they said, oh no, do you want us to keep ours on? And I said, oh no, well, I can put mine on. And they're like, no, we can take ours off. And the third person said, I'll just take mine off. And I'm like, are you okay with taking it off? I'm okay with taking it off. Are you okay? You sure you don't want to put yours on? I said, I'm okay with keeping it off. It's a big room, we'll be okay. Okay, well, I'll take it off. So they all took off their masks, and then we had to do the next thing. He did this. I did this because before COVID, I spent time in Thailand and Indonesia. Nobody shakes hands there. They all bow. So it got used to when COVID hit for me just to start bowing to people. He sticks out his hand. I bow. He bows. I stick out my hand. Then he sticks out his fist, and then I stick out my elbow, right? So we're doing this thing, and we don't know what happens. Finally, we're like, how do you want to do this? And I'm like, let's shake hands. And he holds out his fist. So I fist pump him, shake hands with the other person, and sit down, and we're exhausted. And I look at them, I said, welcome to 2022. We have to acknowledge that these ridiculous conversations are going to keep happening. You're going to meet somebody and they're going to have a mask, or you won't. It'll be the other way around. And then you're like, do I wear my mask or do I not wear my mask? It's okay. And we don't have to do it. We're going to have this conversation until we're probably sick of having these conversations. But it doesn't have to be a break. It doesn't have to be something that breaks the connection that we have with the other person. What it can be, and what happened with these people, was instead of a break, it turned into a bond because we had a shared human experience. Then we talked about, where were you when the lockdown happened, and did you have it? And instead of going, oh, this is so annoying, I have to keep doing this, we actually created part of the shared human history that almost 8 billion people now have to have these conversations, and we're a part of that story. And so as a result, we can use it to create a bond with people rather than a break. Now, Simon Sinek is probably the most famous marketer, at least in the Western world. He wrote a book before COVID, and he said, creating an emotional connection takes energy. And now it even takes more energy. And I'll even elaborate on that and say when we connect with somebody, there should be an exchange of energy that takes place. And so when we create that exchange of energy now, we have to acknowledge Two things. Number one, we're going to have these crazy conversations about masks or shaking hands or elbowing or whatever. And then we're also going to have a conversation to ourselves and say, this will take more energy than it did in 2019 to connect with somebody, especially with somebody I don't know yet. A new client, a new partner, a new supplier, a new employee. Whoever it is, it's going to take a little bit more because we're going to have those extra conversations. And so we're going to have to kind of gear ourselves up and go, okay, let's take the plunge. And if you're a little bit of an introvert, that's going to be a little bit harder. We have to acknowledge that it takes more energy. The second one is wonder, curiosity. Can we have some wonder with one another? Now, how many of you had this conversation? You have some groceries, you go to the checkout, and they say, hi, how are you? I'm good, how are you? Would you like bags? No, thank you. Boop, 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 $13.82, thanks, goodbye. Or this conversation, hi, how can I help you? I'd like an Americano and an avocado toast. Is that for here or to go? That's for here, great, boop, $13.82, goodbye. We've all had those types of, maybe not the avocado toast, but we've had all those types of conversations, right? What if we break the script, which was what Joe Cohen talks in his book, The Power of Strangers. I just done teaching. I teach teenagers public speaking. And I got done and I was super hungry. It was like 9 o'clock at night. So I ordered food on DoorDash to go pick up. And I went in and it wasn't busy. And I walked up to the counter and the person said, how are you today? And I said, I'm an 8 out of 10. And she went, I'm a 9 out of 10. I'm like, why are you a 9? She goes, it's a good day. My shift is almost over. Why are you only an 8? And I said, because I'm hungry. And she said, then you'll be a 10 after you eat our food. And I said, it smells good, but I'll be the judge of that later. And I grabbed the food and she goes, you'll be a 10 next time I see you. And I said, we'll see. And I left. Now I haven't been back there since then. The food was great. It wasn't their fault. It's just not in my neighborhood. But I guarantee you, if I went back and saw the same person again, that she might not recognize me, but if I said, I'm a 10 out of 10, she'd remember that conversation. And that took no longer than it would take normally if I just said, hi, how are you? Thank you, goodbye. On occasion, and you have to do this all the time, Robin Dunbar, who's a sociologist, says that we have about 150 people in our sphere of influence that we can exchange energy with. Which means that this is the way he puts it, if you're sitting in a bar and there's an empty bar stool next to you and somebody's in that 150 and you see them come in, you'd be like, hey, come on over, I'll buy you a drink. Or you buy me a drink. If they're outside of that 150, you might just go, hey, and maybe hope they don't come over. But we have the emotional capacity for about 150 people. The reason why I say that is that we don't have to go, hi, I'm an 8 out of 10 with everybody you meet. But on occasion, can we, when there's nobody behind us in a line, can we have a little bit of an extra conversation? How many people, and you don't even have to raise your hand, just think about it. How many people that are in your workspace, hopefully not your home space, but in your workspace or that third space, maybe a space like this that's not work or home, but it's kind of affiliated or something that you're part of, like pickleball, right? How many of you are in a space like that where you go, hi, I'm good, how are you? I'm fine, good to see you, goodbye, and that's all. Is there people at work that maybe you see a couple times a month, but you don't really have that conversation? Is there a supplier that you work with and you're going through the struggles of supply chain shortfalls that you're just like, where's my stuff, right? But what if we took a moment and go, you know what, I got 3 minutes. I'll have a little bit more of a conversation with this person. Nobody's behind me at the checkout. I'll have a little bit more of a conversation with this person. Somebody at work, you see a picture on their desk, you've never asked what it is. And you'd be like, well, why do you have a picture of a giraffe on your desk? Or whatever it might be. Probably their kids, not a giraffe. But unless they're like a giraffe, and then you might have, this is my son. Right? I don't know where that came from. That was not a planned joke, so it's okay if you don't laugh at that one. Being full of wonder and a little bit of curiosity and a little presence can go a long way. How many times, though, do we have a conversation and you say, I'm in the millwork business. Now, you guys, this conversation will be different, but I don't know anything about millwork. If I had time, I might ask him a little bit more about what that looks like, what his training was, things like that. But how many times do we have a conversation And somebody says, I'm a barber. That's great. I'm in the millwork business. Wow, it's cold out, isn't it? Yeah, it's kind of weird. You know, May in Vancouver, it's cold out. See you later, right? What if we drilled down? How many of you guys have been to like a party? I don't know if anybody who actually buys this on their own, but you go to a party and there's 7-layer dip. Right? Okay. So I think there's like a prerequisite that if you're like over 30 and you're at a party of over 20, the 7-layer dip has to be there. And so, this is kind of a cheesy way to remember it, and that's weird because I think there's cheese in the 7-layer dip, but 7 layers deep. If we go 7 layers deep on the same subject, then what happens is we start to get to know them a little bit more. What if we did that with maybe some people we don't know so well that we work with, or that we sit around and have dinner with? Hopefully it's not your family, but people that you're talking to on a regular basis, 7 layers deep. Ask that question. Now, if John and I were talking, let's say we're at like a networking thing, and John says, oh, I'm in millwork. Oh, what inspired you to do that? Oh, it's a family-run business. What do you do? I'm a speaker. Oh, tell me about being a speaker. What inspired you to speak? Well, I was in 8th grade and I won the speech contest, and it was weird because it turned out that I thought I had a gift for it. But wait, tell me a little bit more about the millwork business. Because what happens is I'm going to continue to ask questions about John, hopefully not sounding like an interrogation. We don't want to do that and have him feel like there's an investigative reporter that's going to do an expose on him. But that there's that question that we keep asking to get to something that's a little bit deeper than what do I do? It gets into what do I believe in? What am I passionate about? What inspires me? And lots of times you can see it in the body language. Now, standing up here in front of a crowd, right, it's a little bit staged. But if John and I were talking at like a networking meeting or even something like this, and you're asking those questions and John's just sitting there, and you're asking enough questions, and then John starts doing this, or even John just starts doing this, a little bit more than what he does normally. Now, I don't know, like maybe you're really expressive, but you do a little bit more, and now you've triggered something, because you've triggered an emotional response. Now, we're not looking around trying to get emotional responses from everybody, but I guarantee you there's people you know that are in that 150 or in that sphere of influence that you're working with, that's in your third space, that you're partners with in some way, that you can do a little bit more to be able to create a deeper connection. And so it's great to have an opportunity for a couple minutes to go 7 layers deep. And you don't have to count on your fingers or anything, just have a conversation. If I sat and just talked about my speaking for like 5 minutes to John and never asked a question about him, he's gonna leave and going, well, that guy was, I guess, kind of entertaining. But was there a real connection that was made? Probably not. So be filled with wonder. Be filled with that curiosity in other people. Now the last one, the last of the 3, and I'll share the last one and then I'm gonna open it up for some questions, and then I have a final point, just so you know kind of where we're going. Last one, I struggled honestly a little bit with the last one because I couldn't think of any M words, which is weird, and then I thought of too many. And so I thought of cheating and using the word empathy, because that's funny because it doesn't start with an E, right? Or it doesn't start with an E, it starts with an M. I even blew my own joke. It starts with an M. But then one of my teenagers that I teach said, how about meaning? And I thought, meaning is really good. But what I settled on was movement, motion, either one of those. We'll stick with motion, like a motion picture. Okay? And here's why. Joseph Campbell actually wrote a book on the hero's journey. He actually did a whole study on it, and it's hours and hours and hours long. I'll give you the short version. Here's a life. Let's pick a movie character, Luke Skywalker. Y'all know who Luke Skywalker is, right? Okay, if you don't, I don't feel bad if I give the plot away because the movie's like 30 years old. You'll be fine. Just go watch it on Disney+. So Luke Skywalker, right? He's an unhappy farm boy on a desert planet, and he buys a couple droids, robots, to help him. Turns out the robots have been, they're hiding information to stop the evil galactic empire. And while he's away, the empire comes and they kill his aunt and uncle. And he also, at that same time, finds out that his father was a Jedi. He didn't know the rest of the story at the time, but his father was a Jedi, and Obi-Wan Kenobi's a Jedi. But his life is like this, and then takes a drastic change. Now think about other movies that have heroes in them. Harry Potter, Hunger Games, Iron Man, Spider-Man. Life is like this. It takes a change, and then there's a battle. Now, fortunately, we don't have to battle stormtroopers, but we do have to battle sometimes what's in our head, which is what I was doing, is battling what's in my head. We also have mentors, which is why I also wanted to play around with the mentor word as an M. Gandalf for The Hobbit, Obi-Wan Kenobi for Luke Skywalker. We all have these mentors. How many of you, think about it, how many of you had mentors for what you do? You all have mentors for what you do. That's why you do what you do. And you're probably, or will be, mentoring other people. But it's not just mentoring people about millwork, it's mentoring people about life. And so we have these people. Mark was my mentor about life, not about renovation. But as we're facing these battles, these other people come into our lives and they mentor us and they support us. And then we can start to climb out of the other side and we become a new and better us. So think about, here's your business, here's COVID. You may be just as busy, you may have to hire more people, but there's this adjustment. Do you have it? Do you not have it? Do you have to stay home? Do you not stay home? What are we gonna do? Where are things? The uncertain future has become blurrier than it ever has been. So you get together and you talk and you strategize and you're trying to figure out how to get day to day. And you learn from each other and you gradually emerge from the other side. In that, it's critical to communicate. It's critical to problem solve. Change management, I've seen organizations with bad change management. When something happens, the company falls. So as you're doing things, as you're working toward this new future, have a mindset that you're the hero of your own story. And just as importantly, you're the mentor of somebody else's story. When we treat others like they're the hero of their story, we treat them differently. And so when we look at somebody, like John, I keep picking on John, but his name tag's there, it's easy to read. But if John is the hero of his story, and I can come along in some small way and say, how can I help you, John? How can I help you emerge from this dip that we have in our lives, where we start here and we dip and then we come back out better, that hero's journey? How can I help you get through that? If we all have that attitude toward one another, then just think of it as a motion picture. We're moving, we're in motion, and we're continuing on. If we hit something, if we hit a roadblock, we can't stay there. We have to move through it. And that's what this organization can be a part of, is to helping everybody get through the changes and moving forward of what it might look like in 5 years, because we don't know. So stay connected with each other. In the Zulu tribe in South Africa, there's a greeting. Full disclosure, I pause there for a minute going, what is it in Zulu? Because it slipped my mind. But I know the translation. And it says, I see you. And what it means is not like, hey, I see you too. What it means, I'm gonna completely destroy Jeff's equipment. Okay. What it means when they greet each other in Zulu and they say, I see you and I see you too, it says, we're connected. We're human. All our faults, the masks are off. But I value you as a human, and I respect you. And we have this space. We own this space together. And regardless of our differences, whether it's education or cultural, it doesn't matter. Whatever the differences are, this space is a sacred space between you and me. Now, what if we could manage conflict and have that in the back of our head? What if we could talk to somebody that's frustrating us at work and we have that in the back of our head? Or a supplier that still can't get your supplies and it's not their fault? What if we go to the barista who's overworked and underpaid and putting their lives on the line for the last 2 years? If we just think in the back of our head, because you don't want to go up to the barista and be like, I see you. But what if in the back of our head we're thinking, I see you. Yeah, I'll have that Americano and that avocado toast. And I'm a 9 out of 10. I hope you're a 9 out of 10 too. Have a good day. We don't do it all the time. But if we have that moment of being present with one another, am I like really close in the camera? Oh no, I'm okay. Of being present with one another and acknowledging one another's humanity, then, as I haven't said this yet, but we rise above the noise. There's so much noise out there in the information. We all know this. There's noise everywhere, and it's become noisier because we've all had to go online so much with Zoom and all this information, and you're talking to somebody on Zoom and their camera's off and you don't know if they're checking their phone or doing the dishes or are they even awake, right? We don't know those things. But if we have the attitude of looking beyond that and saying, I see you and I recognize you and I value your humanity, and take that little extra energy when we're working with our clients, when we're working with our customers, when we're working with our suppliers and our partners, then we're the ones that rise above the noise. We're the ones that move ahead with better businesses, better personal lives, better connections, and a better future. And that's how we move forward in communicating in this weird post-COVID era that we live in now. Thank you.